Okay, we are live. Boop, boop. Hey, everybody.
That's a big crack.
No, I just want to say hi, everybody. This is Videodreww, and I'm here with my co-host.
Hello. Over here, that way. Hi. Yes. I'm Alex Mack. I am usually with Call to Action, the Schmoedown fan podcast crew kind of thing. But I love Videodreww. I love Drew and everything she does. So I was pretty psyched to talk anything when it comes to movies, kind of putting.
So why don't we tell everyone a little bit about how this concept got started? This, by the way, is a show called Cinema Bias with Videodreww and Alex Mack, which is the name of that kid that could turn into goo back in the day on a Nickelodeon show, I believe. Yeah,
I was
Mack, right?
Before that was a show. Just saying.
Just saying, you were ahead of the bell curve there. So this is the show that we kind of created on the idea that you and I probably have very different media tastes.
Yeah, well, we have very different approaches to movies. We have different types of movies that we both love. We both had very different upbringings, and when it comes to movies. So, making these not so much debates, but our big takeaways when it comes to these movies are going to be drastically different. So I'm excited.
Or I would say, even what movies we've seen or not seen. Like, for instance, we are starting out with the movie Videodrome, which I believe many people out there did not know is a movie.
It's totally a movie.
It's 100% a movie. Alex can now
I did not know. Last week.
So that's already explaining a little bit of a bias there that people don't know that Videodrome is a movie. It's a movie by David Cronenberg. It came out in 1983. It obviously had a huge impact on me, so much so that I named myself on social media long before Schmoedown was a thing. I named myself Videodreww because my name sounded cool, like Videodrome. And then also one of the big phrases in the film is "Long live the new flesh," and that works really well with my name. Long live the Drew Flesh.
And thank you to Bibbs to be the only one that's referenced it in a match.
We're gonna do a quick thing here where we change this to a tripod. So bear with us for a second. You've never heard of this movie, but I know that you hate horror or don't like horror movies.
It's not so much I hate horror. I just didn't grow up watching a lot of horror movies. My parents really raised me on movies, but a father-daughter movie in my household was Silence of the Lambs.
Oh, wow. My favorite
it just depends. I grew up watching, I didn't watch so much horror. I watched a lot of still thrillers, like serial killer movies, true crime, that kind of thing. But like monster movies and movies like that, are very, very new to me. I saw like Candyman and Hellraiser for the first time like 2 weeks ago. So it's a very new experience.
I feel like it's going to be so fun. Everyone's coming up with these new show ideas. Thank you. By the way, hats off to NerdChronic, obviously the silent editor in the room who's helping me
What's up, Eric? Our favorite.
What's up? We can say hi real quick.
Hello.
Hi, Eric.
Hi. Are we crooked?
Oh my gosh, I just noticed you're wearing a Seatway shirt. Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Your shirts are so soft, aren't they?
They are. They're very
super soft.
So we're going to talk a little bit because I'm a very disorganized mind. Thank you. Yeah, I have a very disorganized mind. And Alex, I really like you for many reasons, one of which you were my very first fan to accost me in the bathroom.
Okay, anyone watching this, I do want to clarify. It's not so much accosted you. I screamed at you while your back was turned away from me because we were both in the bathroom. I was going to the sink to wash my hands and you were like drying off your hands. And I screamed and I pointed at you. And I said, Videodreww.
And let's be clear, this was not just a random bathroom. This was a bathroom at the New York event. So it wasn't just like a random bathroom that we both happened to be in. However, it was the first time I'd been approached by a fan. And it was also the first time that someone had startled me, I think, in my adult life. So you went, and I went,
I was like, after I screamed, I was like, I'm so sorry. And then I was like, because I didn't want to ask you for a picture in the bathroom because that's really creepy.
That would have been totally cool. I would love to take.
Yeah, but then
bathroom.
we ended up taking a picture like outside of the bathroom. But I was just like, she probably hates me now. She's
I
weirdo.
Definitely didn't hate you. It's funny today. I saw that there was a Facebook thing being like, I like Videodrew, but she scares me, and I wanted to be like, I'm still scary because I feel like I've my image at this point should just be rehabilitated to be as normal as possible. And if it's still scary, LOL, that's just me.
Well, it's not so much scary. It's more interesting or maybe curious. It's like how Tim Burton isn't scary, but it has a vibe. Very
Tim Burton scary. Would you say, having come into Videodrome, not knowing what it was, did you know anything about the movie before I gave it to you?
Honestly, I didn't even know it was a movie. I really did. Never heard. I've been familiar with David Cronenberg because a lot of his body horror and there's a lot of sci-fi horror elements that I was like actively avoiding because I get sick to my stomach very easily, and I've been actively avoiding anything David Cronenberg. I've never seen The Fly. What?
What about something like, his new work is more like History of Violence or Eastern Promises that deal a lot with
I've
body
only seen
horror.
Eastern Promises, and it freaked me the fuck out. And I was like, fuck this. I get really not much turned off. I get scared of movies easily. So I'm like, I'm a wing.
Silence of the Lambs is the biggest like horror, non-horror. It's the scariest non-horror movie I think I can think of.
Oh my gosh, I love that movie. There's I'm not gonna lie, it does have its issues. Just like any movie, obviously. But
Are you saying it's problematic?
What?
Are you saying it's problematic? No.
Just a little bit. And its approaches to people being transgendered, or it's a lot of the association. A lot of like for a long time there was the idea that if you're transgendered, it means you do have a lot of mental issues and you're more likely to be a serial killer and blah blah blah. Like a lot of people. I'm not saying every person, obviously, or anything like that, but some people legitimately for a long time thought there was an association there. Which is ridiculous. And, and also very similarly to people of the LGBT community. Oh, if you're not like this, therefore you're more likely to be this and you're more likely to be a psychopath or whatever. So it's very problematic in that way, but it's as far as like serial killer movies and like a lot of the thriller elements.
Okay, love it. Well, I want to dive right into it. I do want to say our Streamlabs are going to be open. This is going to kind of be like we have a pretty formatted idea, but it's going to be kind of loosey goosey as we go through it today, because this was my chaotic brain, my chaotic neutral brain plus Alex's lawful good. I think combined together will make for an interesting experience. But we're figuring this out along the way. So you didn't have any preconceived notions besides you don't like body horror and David Cronenberg. Knowing me and that my name was Videodrew and therefore Videodrew was a play on Videodrome, did you have any thoughts about what the movie might be?
Going into it, I thought it was going to be almost like I thought it was going to be possibly like a philosophical, like techno horror, which I kind of feel like it is. And
you got that 100% right.
And you were like, I was going into it, I thought there was like the like right before, like the day I watched it, I remember I looked up a little bit like before, and I just based off the pictures alone, where like the lips and the thing, I was like, this is clearly weird stuff. So, and usually in movies where that's the case, where there's a lot of symbolism, there's a lot of they're asking like big philosophical questions and things like that. The meaning of life, what my life means after this, that kind of thing. So I was kind of expecting that kind of next level intellectuality. Is that intellectuality?
Okay, so with that, that works. And before we talk about whether or not any of that came true, let's get into our very first segment, which I believe By the way, guys, we will be taking questions. See how quickly I get off base. We will be taking questions via Streamlabs. That's videodrew.club. We will maybe even have a person or two on air to join us. So make sure that you guys are all pressing those like and subscribe buttons. But first, we're going to do a little segment that I think I named, but I forgot what I named it. So let's go with what do we have on the sheet?
What was it? It was like tell
in your own words,
that kind of thing.
In your own words.
In your own words. There you go. In your own words.
In your own words, Alex. What was Videodrome about?
A man that's a middle-aged man that's really bored with his life.
Okay.
Looks to the media to kind of fill a hole in his heart, and he gets really bored super easily growing up on said media as often as he does. So he looks for extremes, such as in sex and violence, and he takes it to the extreme because it's never enough. He wants the next thing. Mm-hmm. And therefore it just becomes more than just his involvement with his actual just like relationship with that. It's like an actual ends up becoming his physical as well, not just his mental relationship, I guess.
I think it's a pretty good start. I mean, I love that you start this with it's a guy really bored with his life. It's a guy who's not getting enough. Sorry, I'm putting my computer near my screen so I can I read some of my notes I got.
Yeah.
So the plot, if you were just describing the plot elements, so not just the inner workings of who these people are and what they were to each other. Deborah Harry, very famously, her very first role. Deborah Harry, Blondie.
I didn't even know she was in any movies until I saw this, and I was like, oh, this is delightful. Yeah, she's stunning, by the way. She is gorgeous. Great.
And I love her as a brunette because as somebody who is also brown-haired, I
thought she was a redhead in the movie.
What?
I thought she was a redhead in the movie.
Oh, red. She wears red dresses. She's red brunette-ish, that kind of thing. Hold on, I'm trying to turn out my screen brightness, but can't seem to do that because I'm on a PC and I don't know how to. What is it? This thing? Control this. Off this. That do it? Yeah. Okay, yeah, there we go, baby. Holla. Okay, so let's walk through the beats of the film as best you understood them. A man's bored with his life.
Mm-hmm.
Then what happens?
Man is bored with his life, and his life is really, his view on the world, his view on relationships, on other people is really formed almost exclusively through media, honestly. And he seems like so bored with actual person to person face-to-face relationships. He looks for his to feel something through media by watching TV or whatever it might be, different forms of media. And it's just not enough to fill the hole in his heart. Gotcha. So he keeps looking for something more crazy, more extreme, more, in this case, violent or sexual, he thinks. And so, but also, he ends up meeting he also meets a woman played by Debbie Harry's character. I think her name is Vicky or something like that.
Yeah.
And, but I feel like she's almost in a very similar situation.
Okay.
Where I think she's like a radio DJ, but also like therapist, psychologist, or something.
Yeah, she's sort of like a radio DJ therapist. I should say that, not to interrupt or give some context clues, because I do like the idea of you just doing this blind. But he actually runs up a TV station, a local access smut TV station.
Yeah, so his job is to basically have the most extreme, the most bonkers thing. And it's constantly a question of whether or not extreme violence in TV is really going to have that much of an impact on life, like actual life that's not on screen.
And then he finds something. He finds what he believes to be a pirated video channel. By the way, guys, like if you want to do it, we can watch the trailer. I believe we can watch the trailer without going hopefully. So let's try to do this. Let me try to do this. If we get pulled down, then you know whose fault it is. It is the government's. Okay, let's see. Let's see what this is. Oh, got
Just
it.
saying. James Woods.
Could get it.
What a weird guy.
Oh, I was about to say could get it. Yeah, no. Okay, weird guy. Sure. Sure. I was going to say could get it. But yeah, weird guy works.
I don't know. I was like, him watching him in this movie, he just seems so angry the entire time.
As well you would be if a vagina opens up in your stomach. Spoiler alert.
It's symbolic.
Yes. So let's watch the theatrical trailer just to get a little sense of what people themselves. By the way, guys, you can tell me if the audio levels seem a little bunk. How's the audio levels? Good so far. Okie dokie. Again, guys, it's a work in progress, and I could have made more time in the day for this, but I had to return some videotapes. That's a reference. Okay, so trailer to Videodrome, 1983. Press play.
Oh, I think we're showing the wrong one, Drew.
I'm doing the wrong one?
Yeah.
You're right. Doing the wrong one.
Yeah.
I don't know how that thing came up, but yeah, that's absolutely the wrong one. Stop share screen. Share screen. With this thing. It's because I have several Videodrome. There we go. This one's right. And here we go.
Oh, if you can make it on like the biggest screen possible on there, and it like fulls.
Yep.
Maximize it. Yeah, it's a big one.
Sure. What about the other reasons?
Oh my gosh, it's so fucking angry. Great.
Max Wren is a victim.
I woke up with a headache.
He has been exposed to Videodrome.
I've been hallucinating for a while, ever since...
What? Since I first saw Videodrome.
His brain is already receiving video images.
I think that massive doses of Videodrome signal will ultimately produce and control hallucination to the point that it will change human reality.
Soon, his visions will coalesce and become uncontrollable flesh. Videodrome is seducing Max Wren.
Come to me now.
Oh my gosh, that was so weird.
That was so
And Max Wren can do nothing to stop it.
What makes you think I need help? None of our test subjects has returned to normality.
Television can change your mind. Videodrome will change your
Not a
body.
normal test subject.
Long live the new Flash.
It will shatter your reality. Videodrome, starring Deborah Harry and James Woods. A shocking
Deborah
new
Harry,
vision
the
from the creator
Deborah.
of Scanners.
Okay.
Coming soon to a theater near you from Universal Pictures.
Okay, just saying, kudos to Universal Pictures for putting up this weird ass movie and thinking, yeah, I want to put money on it.
Well, this has already been David Cronenberg's 8th film, so he had already proven himself as a pretty standard director. There is one thriller I want to play because if you can't get what the plot of the movie is based on this, haha, why would you? You just heard what somebody who's now seen the movie thinks it's about.
Was it, even if you're watching, but even if you're an established filmmaker like Cronenberg was by this time, you know, it would it's still such a weird premise. I mean, I can't think of a
Why
movie
would anybody watch a scum show like Videodrome?
or even close.
Why did you watch it, Max? Business reasons. Sure.
Business reasons.
What about the other reasons?
Is this the same one? No.
And actually, ooh, it is different.
Max
Maybe
Wren
not.
is a
No, it's the same one.
I woke up with a
Same one?
headache.
Okay,
He has
guys,
been
there's one more I wanted
exposed
to
to
watch.
Videodrome.
I've been hallucinating
Hold on, blah blah blah. I do like the part. There's a couple great lines in this film.
for a while, ever since...
What?
There's a couple great lines that I want to get to in this film.
Well, absolutely. I mean, as far as like great, there's, I mean, there are like great moments. I feel like in this movie, I'm like, I don't know, I'm still like weird about the movie overall. I don't know how I feel about it, but there are several great lines and moments where I was like, that's pretty solid.
That's yeah.
Yeah.
But this one, for some reason, the volume is very low. Well, anyway, this gives you some imagery. I'm so sorry, I'm trying to look at what's going on. Some context imagery of Videodrome, which is nothing. You don't get a lot from these trailers.
Well, that's why they used to be, you know?
It's very me specific. It's very much you know, promising a lot, delivering on incredibly great visuals. A score by Howard Shore, which I didn't know.
Which is really weird.
Really weird. Some great visual effects by Academy Award winning. Hold on, I have the name up, but of course I couldn't find it. Videodrome.
Well, considering as well, like the trailers, I did not watch the trailers ahead of this. The trailers, how much of it relies on animation, and there's that, you know, it reminds me of a lot of my favorite, you know, animated shows like from the 80s and everything, you know, like Thundercats and, you know, all that good stuff. It kind of has a very similar feel. I'm actually kind of surprised looking back that animation wasn't more involved in the movie itself.
Well, first of all, Movie Finobi, thank you for donating. There will be Movie Finobi just donated saying he was here for the makeup tutorial, which God, I think I left my makeup in Eric's room, so I don't know where if we can actually do makeup today. Eric, if you want to go bring me my makeup kit, that'd be cool. Because I do also want to be putting on makeup while Videodrome is happening. So
that was pretty for the Videodrome.
Yeah. So basically, we have a premise here of a guy who runs an underground sort of smut station, who's always looking for the next big cheap thrill, this thing that turns him on, this new kinky thing. And this movie was made in 1983, which is something we have to remember about it. But he finds this pirated channel that at first he thinks is coming out of Malaysia. Later, it turns out to be from Pittsburgh, you know, where all the crazy things happen.
Totally.
Let's see.
That's going to be a Schmoedown question.
Yeah, so I heard there was actually, I mean, no spoilers. I hear there might be a Videodrome question in Schmoedown.
I hope so. So it's not a Cronenberg category or something by now.
I mean, there should be. There absolutely should be a Cronenberg category. But going forward, so this guy, he's since he's a smut peddler, he's invited on a late night talk show to defend his position about whether or not this kind of television media of sensationalist, titillating stuff is rotting people's brains, and he is brought on stage along with
Debbie Harry,
Dr. Brian, Debbie Harry, who is a sex therapist, a radio sex therapist, and Dr. Brian Oblivion, who is a very clearly inspired, and the movie itself was inspired by Marshall McLuhan, who we'll get to in a little bit. So just walking you through the points of the movie. So he discovers this thing called Videodrome. He starts dating Deborah Harry in this wonderful bit. They start talking during the show. He kind of gives her some like toxic masculinity where she's like, I think we're all overstimulated these days and it's your guys' fault. And he goes, well, why'd you wear that red dress? And she goes, well, I am a very overstimulated person. And he goes, I'd like to take you out sometime.
Well, I mean, that's something I'm a little curious about. In this movie, it seems like it's something that it's very everyone talks about, where it's not so much a hush hush thing, where it's just like everyone likes to label themselves. I'm normal. I'm stimulated. I'm not stimulated. You know, I'm at a good pace right there. But in a movie where it's all about being overstimulated, by her saying that, she's like very right out the gate. She's like, I'm already in your neck of the woods.
Yeah. It's almost like, you know, we're sort of thinking if in today's modern equivalent, it'd be like taking someone to task on like a date, not like Dateline, but like one of these shows where it's like a gotcha thing. You were thinking that this was going to be a gotcha thing, but instead these two have more in common than they thought, including up to the point that she's actually a kinkier bitch than he is. When they go home at night and end up sleeping together, she wants him to like physically hurt her, to cut things into her neck. He doesn't
do that. He pierces her ears.
He pierces her ear, but she wants him to cut into his neck, her neck.
Yeah, later on.
Yeah, she has a bunch of scars, and he's like, what's going on over here? She's really into Videodrome, and what we've seen of it so far, from what the little glimpses, is that it's basically. And what's funny about watching Videodrome now, it's like, oh yeah, that's just like Pornhub. Like it's just like the BDSM section of like a porn site. Like it is somebody tied up against what looks like what they call wet clay, being maybe electrocuted, tortured by somebody with hoods on. By the way,
there isn't even so much clarification, though. I mean, if it is just because it's not so much exclusively sexual. I mean, there is that kind of that kind of vibe, sure. But I mean, it could be that, or it could be what is it, like is it snuff film?
Yeah, it could be snuff. It's definitely torture, sex, porn. Like it hits all these things. Yeah. And what I think is interesting, though, is like this is a cultural commentary that's being made in 1983, and we'll hit on this a little bit in the next section, but like what a Nostradamus like this movie turned out to be about a lot of things, about how we consume media and how we are changed and like forever changing by the media that we bring into our eyeballs. Because at this point, like I don't know, watching this movie again, it almost seemed quaint. I was like, oh, look, they're watching a little movie about like a little snuff film. It's like one of those things you would look on the internet and do a Google search for and find, and would forever change the way you probably have sex, because you would be like, but it's normalized now. However, he starts having very insane hallucinations almost right off the bat gate, including stuff such as like he imagines his television. She goes away to one of the funnier things is Deborah Harry immediately, like in a Videodrome move, assumes that this is a game show, that what they're watching is a game show, and that she's
like, I was made for this.
She's like, how do you get to be contestant? And he's like, on what? The thing where
I'm gonna be auditioning
steak hooks and people torture you? She's like, I'm gonna go to Pittsburgh and try to get on the show. So what's funny is, so immediately he starts having these hallucinations of her. He's seeing her. He's watching TV, and it's sort of the TV starts to pulse. We have these really insane, and at the time, like insane graphic, like insanely well done special effects, where the TV seems to obscenely pulse and bulge, and her lips kind of come through, and we're watching. He starts to think he has a rash that then develops into a gaping stomach vagina. No spoilers there.
Can we bring that up somehow? Can I bring that up? Can I bring that up here?
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Okay. It's a very specific visual that's very, not just hard to describe, but it's very kind of difficult to describe, because it's also like a very symbolic situation, because the entire time it's something that's constantly being covered. He's constantly putting things in it. He's constantly taking things out. It's like it's a weird thing.
Yeah, it's a weird thing. It's hard to think about. It's hard to it's hard to describe, because it's hard to want to think about it. It's a really graphic image, so much so that what you're covering up right now on your face, that we have for our like thing for the show, is basically a closed up version of that stomach wound. And I went back and forth with the amazing Robert Adams from Cinefanatic about whether or not we could even show that, or whether or not that was too graphically disturbing. Because
there it is.
The facial, somebody got it. Yeah. How are you able to do that? What are you, magic? Okay, so there we go. So that's what we're looking at here.
It's like it's something that's pulsing, and it's like stuff that's constantly kind of going in, and it's just like things are happening surrounding it. When he's like touching it, for example, he ends up putting his gun inside of himself.
Why does he have a gun? That's the other thing. He just has a gun with a holster he keeps on at home, and then he's like scratching, and then he's like, let me just see if I can put this whole gun in my stomach. It's a little. He's jacking off in that image too, which is absolutely perfect.
What is going on there? But I mean, when he's like putting the gun, he's like, and he's putting in the gun inside his stomach. He's watching it right after. he hallucinates, seeing Nikki in the TV essentially, or at least her mouth, and he thinks like the TV is like breathing. It starts to kind of take on another form almost, and he's, like putting his face into it. But at this point, it's that point where that visual, this comes up, and he's like, you know what? Now's a good time to put my gun in my stomach.
Yeah, as one does.
And he does. I mean, it's very symbolic of him. It's one of the first times he's like, he's also being told to do something.
Yes.
So he's almost, it's like symbolic that he's kind of putting something in himself that's, violent. He's knowingly doing it. He's almost excited about it. But also he's kind of going through this little conflict of whether or not this is a good thing, even though I like it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's the idea of, like, I think a metaphor for pornography and our relationship to pornography in the 80s, especially, which is, it was this very, like, underground thing. It's a very sleazy thing. It was hard to get your hands on. People who liked it were considered perverts and freaks. And people had a very conflicted relationship to pornography, and not just pornography, but violence in general, and the idea of being titillated or stimulated, or whether even movies like this in a meta context were criticisms of being of this kind of show or program, which, by the way, is described as like a plotless sort of reality show. Like this show, Videodrome hits on so many things that we eventually get to as a society that it's kind of creepy. It's just like it's a meandering show where nothing happens and people are tortured and there's no plot, and this guy is like brilliant. I love it. Now, is there any reason particularly that we're using the word hallucinating for what's going on with him?
Well, honestly, going into it, I have a hard time trying to figure out what he is and isn't hallucinating. Yes, I can look at that image and be like, okay, that's not real, obviously, but this is a world of weird sci-fi fantasy, where maybe it is actually happening in this world where, people are kind of taking on this next step of evolution where humans and technology are kind of merging together in this unusual way. So when I was watching this, there is no clear moment where you're like hallucinating, not hallucinating. Like there's no blinding light that flashes by, or anything like that. There's only other people saying specifically. There's only other people telling you that you're hallucinating. And he never goes to that actual clarity himself.
Right. He's never really clear on it. The reason the word where hallucination comes such a key word in this is because he goes and finds out he's given a name, and the name turns out to be Dr. Oblivion, who is the person that he showed up on the talk show with, but who never actually showed up on the talk show. He was a talking head. He was in a TV that appeared on the TV. So they wheeled in a TV, and this guy was talking through the TV. He said he has a very famous quote in this, or it's a very Marshall McLuhan-y quote, where he goes, let's see if I have it here. Well, he does say, like, the TV is the retina, like of the soul of people. He says, soon we will all have special names. Mm-hmm. That's right. That's me right there. His preferred form of discourse is the monologue. So this is a guy who literally will just appear on stage as a television talking to you. So James Woods goes and gets his name and finds this guy, and he finds his daughter, and he finds out that Videodrome itself, what Videodrome is, might be a series of it might not even be a video of anything. It might not be a broadcast. It might just be a series of static, something that triggers a brain tumor, and that brain tumor makes you hallucinate. So that's where we're at a certain point in the film. We think, okay, well, maybe none of this is real, and then that gets kind of walked back a little bit. But what's really interesting then is, like, we kind of go through these dream states. Is he hurting anybody? Is he got a vagina in his stomach? There's this ulterior sort of faceless corporation who owns sunglasses. They're like the sunglass conglomerate, which again turned out to be because like 90% of the world's glasses are owned by this one syndicate. So that again was pretty prominent, like a premonition that he had there.
It's also symbolic, that they keep talking about how the media is like the eye, the retina, to who we are and what's going on. But at the same time, the company that's controlling everything is a company that makes glasses and sunglasses. And so they're the things that are kind of blocking, in theory, what we see, or preventing it, or covering it, or just in some way controlling what we see. They determine what we can and cannot see. And
I mean,
it's just kind of weird.
And the plot kind of devolves from there. And I'm not going to try to explain too much more of it, because it kind of almost like it's sort of pointless to try to explain it. We find out that Dr. Oblivion may have died of a brain tumor caused by Videodrome. The syndicate that is in control of Videodrome wants to take over the airways and give Videodrome to the people, because Videodrome has a transformative effect where you literally you watch it and you consume it, but it also consumes you in the form of a sort of cancerous-like thing, and you are changed because of it. Or is it all hallucination? At the very least, it gives you a brain tumor, and these people who run the glasses syndicate of the world wants everyone to have a brain tumor that makes them sexually and violently crazy.
Can I share a theory?
Yeah, go ahead.
After, when he goes to the glasses shop, where he puts the helmet thing on for the first time,
Mm-hmm.
I have a theory that, or he's talking, I don't know who the actor is, but he's like the owner.
Yeah.
He's owner of the company, essentially, where he's like, no one's ever come back. No one's ever actually survived, or whatever. Maybe.
Or like everyone's gone crazy, basically. Everyone.
You were the longest normalized person in this state, kind of thing. And then he puts on the helmet.
And then the guy who owns it goes, don't mind if I don't stick around. I don't like the weird stuff, which is a hilarious thing to say.
Yeah, that's actually a really great line. I love that. Yeah. But I have a theory that he actually never gets out of that. And so everything after that is actually just the hallucination from the visuals that is going on through that helmet.
That is definitely an interpretation that works. I mean, there's no reason that wouldn't work. The only question there would be, where's my set? Thank you, Eric, bringing the makeup so I can feel less nude when I do this. The other thing that brings up, so let's just real quick go through this. He's having a lot of hallucinations. He finds out his partner, the guy who pirated what he thought was the Malaysian station to begin with, his sort of producing partner, is in on it. The guy never watched Videodrome. The guy is part of the syndicate. Yes. And so therefore the guy is never saw the videos, so he never got corrupted, because watching the videos corrupts you and makes you crazy. Sort of like what's that movie called, Static or something? Think about like 28 Days Later, kind of zombific. You get infected. You get infected through your eyeballs, and it makes you crazy, and it makes you horny, and it makes you hallucinate. So the guy never ended up watching it. He's part of this thing. So they want actually to have James Woods act as an operative, kill the daughter of Dr. Oblivion, who helped create Videodrome and who they then killed, and now who only exists in video format. They want him to kill the people that he co-runs the station with, this little smutty station, and take the gun out of his stomach and go shoot up his entire office.
But how I love the visuals on how they kind of go about that. He takes the gun out and it literally just morphs into his hands, and it's like just like in the trailer, into his like veins and his hands. Like how they did that is just like
that guy. Like I'm not really gonna look up his name, but the special effects guy. He ended up winning so many Academy Awards.
So fantastic.
Rick Baker did the things. Howard Shore did the music, and Rick Baker did the special effects. I mean,
it's like a lot of creative, really awesome people were involved. It's crazy, right?
Yeah. Well, and here's just like a little background about the movie. Because now we're kind of coming to the end of it, which is that he's actually able to be reprogrammed by Dr. Oblivion's daughter to turn against Videodrome. So when his former partner tries to put another cassette in his vagina stomach, it turns into a grenade that the guy's hand is attached to, blows him up. James Woods like, see you in Pittsburgh, which is an ongoing gag because for some reason the thing is located in Pittsburgh. Then in in a very arch funny way, he goes and kills the leader of this whole operation, the optical guy, by going to a glasses conference, which has been a major sort of set piece that we've been heard about, that they're going to have a glasses.
And they're using the theme of the new like glasses line is the Medici.
Yeah, the Medici.
And the choosing the Medici is like very symbolic as well, because the Medicis were the founders of the sciences and the arts. They were like the ones that that really they like not founded. They were like one of the people that like really go do your thing.
They were patrons of the arts in Italy. So what they did was Medici's basically, they like, you know how you guys pay us on Patreon or pay me on Patreon to go do stuff. That's like what they did, but like on a larger scale. And
they were
patrons of the arts.
They were the reason that the Duomo in Italy was finished. Literally, they were like, we'll pay everyone to work on this for like 5 years.
I stayed on my honeymoon. I stayed in a castle, in a Medici castle on the top of Florence that had those mural walls and everything, and it was crazy. I mean, these people owned Italian art. They got to decide, because they were paying for it. They're like, we want art to go in this direction. We want art to look like this. We want art to look like that. We like it when you do the grotto style, but not this other style.
But at the same time, they liked weird stuff as well. They were very experimental. They kind of let them do their own thing at the same time, where they were like, do a really cool sculpture out of this material, but do whatever you fuck you want. Right. We don't care if it's like symbolic or like referencing, if it's like referencing any Greek mythology, like, or Roman mythology, like back in the day, or if it's referencing the Bible.
Yeah, or like I think in that, like, if you go to the Uffizi Museum in Florence, I mean, a lot of it is very. It was part of the grotesque. It was called the grotesque period in art. It was it's pretty much literal. It was very like, for its time, very pornographic. It was a lot of like and violent. It was a lot of like Salome holding up the head. It's where Hannibal Lecter in the movie in the story and movie of Hannibal goes and teaches art. He becomes
I know.
Over at the Uffizi Museum.
And,
so
Hannibal
together. So just finishing out here. So he goes and kills that guy because he's now been turned against Videodrome, which again is an overarching concept that for some reason these guys thought the best way to take over the world and make everyone a hallucinating crazy person was to get this one like local cable channel to start peddling smut, like, and putting this broadcast on the air. Seems like there was a lot better ways to do that, but then again, we were before streaming, so maybe this is literally the best way they had. With that being done, James Woods has now accomplished his task. He hallucinates Deborah Harry one final time. He was like, come join me. I've learned so much stuff post-death. He's able to pull the gun out, I believe, of his vagina stomach one last time and take it. And the television explodes into a bunch of visceral gore and intestines before he blows a bullet in his brain. And that is the plot of Videodrome, as best as we both can recall. I love that you're like, it's a story about a man dissatisfied with his life, and I'm like, it's a story about a man with a vagina in his stomach.
It's not only that. I mean, it just comes down to he's like, this is where he starts, and he doesn't really have a purpose in his life. He just seems, like I said, he just seems bored with his life, and that's why he's looking for these outside sources, of extreme sources of some form of entertainment in order to feel something. And by going through these motions of like murdering these people, and it kind of gives him a mission to do something it kind of gives him a mission, in life. He kind of going through this kind of pilgrimage, essentially.
That's really interesting. I never read it as such. I never read that he was bored or whatever. I always read it as he was not an anti-hero, but he was somebody who was already compromised. He was never a good guy. He was already peddling smut and doing this. He wasn't bored so much as he's like a producer, and he's like, what's the next big thing? and he finds this thing. And I feel like almost, as opposed to almost everyone else who comes in contact with it or wants to know about it, he's actually a little bit more hesitant. He sees that there's an opportunity for a market. He's like, there's definitely potential for this to be a thing, but he doesn't want Deborah Harry involved with it. He's on the fence about his own involvement of it. I didn't see it so much as giving him a purpose, so much as well, let's actually get into some reviews of what people thought about.
Well, it's not helps him. It's one of the only things that seems like it gives him any kind of, not only just sense of purpose, but it actually gives him some feeling of something. Even when he was, even when he was like having sex, and when he was like going through these going through these situations with Debbie Harry's character, Nikki, or when he was working, the way she was able to get there. Yeah, but there's never any sense where he just looks puzzled. He looks perplexed over the situation. He's like, no, don't do that.
But sex faces are amazing in this movie.
Oh yeah, I mean, he never seems content. I mean, obviously that's the point of the movie. He's like searching for something, but he never seems. He just never seems sated. Essentially,
yes, so. I think that's a great word for it. He never seems sated, and because that kind of goes to what the problem of Videodrome is, or what Videodrome is kind of a thesis on, which is the more that we watch these kind of things, well, it's a dual thesis. It's more, the more we watch this kind of stuff, the less sated we could ever become.
Yeah, because we want something more extreme, more dangerous, more terrifying.
I just want to say real quick, like before we go on to the next section, hey to everybody out there, let's do a quick scroll up. Can you do They Live next? Aaron Brooks, we can't because Alex has a movie for me next.
Oh, yes, I do.
We're going to talk about that in a bit. So this was my recommendation to Alex because week I have a bunch of feelings about Videodrome, all of which we've not even gotten to. I've just been scrapping the plot. But next week, we'll put They Live on the list. Let's see what else we got. Guys, again, if you want to get us our attention, please go over to go over to my version of Streamlabs, which is videodrew.club. You can write in, you can like and donate and hit all those buttons, and something will pop up and I'll be able to hear it and blah, blah. Let's see. I want to go back though and read. Someone just said they watched How Green Is My Valley. I don't believe that's a real movie. I don't believe How Green Is My Valley. I think it's a trivia answer question about Citizen Kane losing out on an Oscar. But I don't believe How Green Is My Valley is actually ever a film. That's just me though. Let's see. Blah, blah, blah.
Well, something I do want to mention as well is that I know people are kind of making suggestions of what we should watch next. The point of when we were picking these movies, she picked a movie that I've never seen before. And again, movies that us individually, because we both have very different upbringings and both very different types of movies that we enjoy and everything. As a result, the movies we've seen, the list of movies we've seen, period, are going to be completely different. So I've never seen this movie. She's never seen the movie that I pick, and we're just going to keep swapping back and forth.
Yeah, and this is to reveal sort of, and hopefully, I mean, the thesis of this project is not to just reveal like our blind spots in movies or movies that we haven't seen, but to sort of uncover some, some preconceived, biases that we have about certain kinds of movies and explore why we don't want to watch certain kinds of movies and see if there's maybe anything to be gained, not just in terms of trivia wise. These are not necessarily questions that you can easily sum up in a trivia game, but to explore like why certain movies or even the concept or what we know about them turn us off, or before we ever give them a chance. So yeah, we're definitely open to suggestions. We'll probably put something up on a Patreon poll or on a Discord or something where you can vote on some concepts, but we're going to have them out of a pre-selected lot that we want to go back and forth on. So next week is definitely not going to be Videodrome.
It's going to be a movie that I love and adore.
Well, it looks like the cat's out of the bag. You mind if I put it up? It looks like Darren.
Yeah, go for it.
So next week we're doing
Josie and the Pussycats. Woo! I cannot wait. This movie is one of the most fun, meta, weird movies of the 90s. And not to mention what a bomb-ass soundtrack.
Now, in fairness, I had seen Josie and the Pussycats. I remember some details about it, not anything plot related. I know Alan Cummings in it and some other things. I remember Seth Rogen in the beginning. I have no interest in rewatching this, so it's going to be fun.
Mhm.
Yeah. So let's see. And so I think the next portion of what we want to get to is sort of, I know I've been talking a lot, but this was going to be sort of the part where I explain the cultural significance of Videodrome and why this movie speaks to me and speaks to a lot of people so much, and how it holds up today, which is that this movie came out in 1983. It was a huge bomb. This was a ginormous failure. It had a budget of 5.9 million and made it recouped 2.1. And
Well, I mean, how do you really market this movie, honestly?
Oh, it wasn't even a problem of marketing, because again, like The Fly, all these movies had done relatively well. He had done
but that's later on. That's a lot later on.
No, these were before. This was his 8th film.
But I mean, The Fly came a lot later.
Did it?
Like a lot of movies. Yeah, The Fly I thought came out in the late 80s.
Let's see,
like 89 or 90 or something.
He had done Scanners, which had been big. He had done Rabid. He had done The Brood. So it came out in 86, right? So let's just do a real quick Cronenberg thing, because look, facts aren't my strong point. But he was already pretty well known for doing these art house kind of things. This was a bigger budget, I think, than he was used to. But let's see. Let's see his filmography.
It's also when you're having a bigger budget, when you have a bigger budget for a movie, that's awesome, but studios have more expectations. Right. They're like, hey, we're investing so much money in you as a content producer, therefore we need so much money back. So that's what I mean. Like, a lot of studios are like, well, we need to guarantee to make so much money. So can you make it a little more conventional, or put these big name actors or whatever it is to guarantee a certain dollar?
And now I'm looking at it. Here's the other thing. He had another movie released that year.
Yeah.
And it was The Dead Zone.
Yes.
So he actually had a pretty successful year in terms of
Did Dead Zone make money? A lot of money?
The Dead Zone, I think Dead Zone did pretty well. Yeah, he was not the writer on it, but he was, positive reviews, reception. It did pretty well in the box office, I believe. Because it's based on Stephen King. It starred Christopher Walken. He didn't write it, so the themes weren't as weird or as techno erotic as you want to see. So before this, he had done movies like Scanners, The Brood, Rabid. I mean, these are all movies that involve psychosexual techno elements. I mean, Scanners is the one with the famous GIF of the guy's head blowing up.
This was one of his more expensive movies, though, at the time.
Yes.
Wasn't it the most expensive movie he made up until that point?
Yeah, I think that's probably the most expensive. It was definitely probably the most high budget movie, unless The Dead Zone. The Dead Zone might have cost more, but just because of the actor. I'm trying to figure out doing a real thing. Let's see.
Well, I mean, when it comes to, obviously, the success of a movie doesn't correspond with a dollar amount, but I mean, obviously, if a movie costs $200 million to make, it's a failure. Even if it's huge to hit $100 million, it's still considered a failure if it doesn't rebound with its money. That's all.
Oh no! I'm looking at it now. He did. Cronenberg had a great year. Yeah, it cost $7.1 million to make. Was The Dead Zone? It got back 16.3 million or 20 million. I don't know, for some reason Wikipedia says it's either 16.3 or 20 million. Maybe that's domestic versus overseas, but that movie did very well. What's interesting is they gave him a bunch of money in the same year to do 2 films. And this was
definitely the same studio.
What?
Is it the same studio?
That's double check. No, that's Paramount.
Oh,
not Universal.
And this one, I believe, was Universal.
I believe Videodrome is Universal. The other thing was, again, Stephen King being attached as the writer of the thing. Stephen King is huge, whereas Cronenberg himself was known for doing. It's kind of like that. It's kind of like that thing right now where you get a indie director to go reboot a franchise. You're like, let's go get the guy. Let's get Mike Flanagan to do Ouija, Origin of Evil. It's kind of like that thing where it's like, let's get this weird director who does these very niche, creepy things and give him a Stephen King story that's more straightforward.
I think a lot of that credit, though, comes down to not only, obviously, because I personally, I wasn't watching movies actively in 1982, 83. However, it's
the year before I was born.
But no, but I mean, the same thing is, it's like, but I mean, like, there might have been, I don't know if, even though he had quite a bit of, success, with his movies, I don't know if he was considered a name, like a huge name at the time. I mean, and then sometimes that takes time. It takes like a lot bigger movies, not just some niche movies. But I mean, like, I wonder if people, like, when it comes to the Scanner Darkly, is that what you said, right?
No, the Scanners. Scanners the one that explodes.
Oh, sorry. Yes, thank you for correcting me. I wonder if there's more of an attraction towards knowing that it was Stephen King. That was like a lot more of the name.
Dead Zone was the one that he did that was Stephen King, and Scanners was just a movie that Cronenberg made previously that he also directed. Scanners Darkly, David, not Cronenberg. It's what's his name? It's based on a Philip K. Dick story, and it is directed by Soderbergh, I want to say, or no, not Soderbergh. Someone correct me. About who directed Scanner Darkly. It's the Everybody Wants Some guy. Anyway, the point being that that this guy kind of was an indie director. Like, imagine him as being like just sort of that, like, the Grindhouse, You're Next. He would have like had his movies premiered at South by, except they premiered at Con. They'd done well enough that he became, and during this time in the 80s, like, where things were on VHS, things were a lot more like cult movies. They didn't have to have these huge box office.
People were finding.
Yeah, they were finding
a lot of different types of
movies. That's who did it.
Not just the big stuff.
Linklater did Scanner Darkly. That's not really relevant to the conversation, except that yes, Linklater did Scanner Darkly. Cronenberg did Scanners. The Brood was a crazy movie. I mean, he just did very extreme kinds of stuff. And Videodrome, I don't think anyone expected Videodrome to be any exception. The Dead Zone was probably, I keep forgetting he directed The Dead Zone because it is more straightforward and less body horror. He filled a niche. Like, the fact that this movie did poorly in the box office didn't stop the fact that, like, people went ape shit over it. Like, Andy Warhol called it this decade's answer to Clockwork Orange. Like, it was got an 80% on Rotten Tomatoes. Of course, like, a lot of that is retroactively, but it was considered groundbreaking in terms of, like, the visual effects and stunningness. I'm trying to read Janet Marlin's review in the New York Times. Though Videodrome finally grows grotesque and a little confused, it begins very well and sustains its cleverness for a long time. I mean, that's the New York Times saying that. That's the New York Times review to understanding that. I mean, people generally liked it. What people had an issue with was whether this movie was glorifying the same thing that it was also kind of wagging its finger at.
Exactly.
I will say, though, that the real thesis of Videodrome is all in the character of Oblivion, because he's based on this guy, Marshall McLuhan, who wrote The Medium is the Massage, or The Medium is the Message, and he was sort of like ahead of his time, way, way, way ahead of his time. He's from the 60s. He created that term that Timothy Leary popularized, tune in, tune in, drop out. What's that thing called? Why do I have it like that? I wrote a bunch of notes that are crazy.
Well, it's a movie that I feel like, although it's a very stylized 80s movie, it's also a movie that holds very well. It really discusses a lot of themes that we still discuss.
Yeah. So
but also it's, like you said, it won a ton of awards for visuals, and it still looks, even though it's like, kind of the way they did it, it's obvious it's fake. I mean, the way it did, but at the same time, it looks so weird. It's so interesting. And I don't know about it. I'm not I didn't go to school for film. I don't know. Maybe there's 30 other movies like it. I just don't know it. But it's definitely an original movie that isn't super common.
Yeah.
And with a lot of themes that weren't really discussed on the big screen all that much.
Well, yes, and not only it kind of is it's kind of like a Trojan horse in that it looks like so graphically awful, whatever, but it really has like a college thesis level, like
absolutely. Yeah.
And so somebody just asked Timothy Leary, didn't Timothy Leary come up with the phrase turn on, tune in, drop out? Actually, no, Timothy Leary credited Marshall McLuhan. That was his phrase. He is also the patron saint of Wired magazine. Marshall McLuhan, I mean, he was a techno philosopher who was also a writer. He was also very famously in that opening scene of Annie Hall, where the guy's standing in line and waxing, like this college student, and they're in line for a movie, and Woody Allen's like hearing a college student being like, Marshall McLuhan, blah, blah, blah. And he's fantasizing about Marshall McLuhan coming into the scene and going, you, sir, know nothing of my work. How you ever became like, you know nothing of my work. So he was really well known as a sort of philosopher of the future. So his thing was the idea of like hot and cold mediums, like the idea of hot mediums being something like movies that have a lot of description and overwhelm your senses. And those were hot, but they didn't require a lot of interpretation or a lot of like, brain waves. You didn't really need to interact with them.
So if we're going to apply it towards a movie, like Independence Day.
Any movie. He said any movie, but yes, Independence Day would be a great example. Movies that were visually stunning. As opposed to
they're telling you the way it is versus something that's cold.
It's an experience and you don't have to think about it. That's a hot medium. And then
anything Michael Bay is a hot medium.
Yes, exactly. Michael Bay would be a hot medium. Then there was cold medium. I mean, he said mediums, but things have become so bifurcated now. And there was like cold mediums, which are like jazz or like abstract art or books or television or comic books, something they were cold because you were not immersed in them. They didn't overwhelm you, but you had enough distance and they required some interpretation. Like they required you
I don't want to say argumentative, but it's very open. It's, where people can have different ideas about it. It's not telling you what to think. It's just letting you think something about it.
So that was his like idea on hot and cold mediums, which he later then revised in a way, because then when we started seeing, he didn't live long enough to see this, but what the idea of is a hot and cold medium is the idea of interaction. How much interaction do you have with the medium? How much are you being changed by, and how much are you interpreting and putting your gaze on it, like in your interpretation? What happened was then the internet happened, and what we're doing right now, like what is this? Is this a hot or cold medium? If we are talking to each other through the television, through the screen, what is the internet as a hot or cold medium? Like how much are we actually influencing like culture day for things like anything that we're watching? Take pornography, for example. Like we are as much influenced, changed, and like have a tumor in our brains about pornography because of the way that pornography was able to be disseminated and changing because of the internet. Marshall McLuhan basically was one of these guys who predicted a lot of stuff that was going to happen when streaming content became available, when it became available for us to do things like Schmoedown and shows where people like talk to you and that you interact with, and it's not just like a theoretical interaction that you have with a text, but an actual literal interaction. It's really funny in a scene where James Woods thinks he's talking to himself while watching Dr. Oblivion on TV, and Dr. Oblivion responds, and he's like, whoa, what? And you're like, yeah, like they're Skyping. That's like a thing that people, that's a normal. It was an idea of, let's see.
I like the I blame gravity 23, what he says. The internet is a hot fudge sundae.
Hot fudge sundae.
A little cold.
Hot, a little cold. So I'm trying to see, like, I should have done these a little bit better, but notes, come on. So the idea when he puts on the thing on his head and they're like, this is going to be where we're going to be able to see your hallucinations. They're really predicting alternate reality gaming and ARG and, Pokemon Go. We're really talking about stuff that exists today. Like Videodrome became a reality. Everything about Videodrome actually became a reality. It's just through the different tech that we have for it. Like the pornography, the violence, the ability to interact with the screens and with the message and be changed by it, so much so that we, when we, a lot of us, I'm not saying a lot of us, I don't want to get into work myself into a corner with the porn angle, but like we have as a society so taken what we've learned from porn on the internet, which is everywhere, as opposed to 1983 where it was very hard to find and like was peddled by some people.
But something to take in consideration is that, up until early mid 80s, porn as the public knew it. The public's interaction with pornography, its perception was that it was something to be enjoyed in a public space at a theater where a lot of people would watch it at the same time. So it was almost, there was that kind of social aspect as well. Obviously, yeah, I'm sorry.
I'm not sure if it was supposed to be enjoyed. If you did enjoy it, you were considered a deviant. Like the idea that
I mean, like even if, regardless of whether or not you enjoyed it, it's something that people watched in a public space. We didn't have access to watch, anything that extreme in the privacy of our own home. So if you're going to watch anything on that kind of level at that time, it was something that you had to do, not just by yourself, obviously, unless you're in an empty theater, but you're watching with a lot of people. In theory, you can say that it kind of encourages that kind of not only social aspect, it kind of encourages that kind of discussion as
well, sort of. And I'd like not to retcon what was going on there. I think what you're talking about, a lot of those, like, Times Square, jizz theater kind of things. We have to understand, though, this was not the people who went to those places and who habituated those places were not considered normal. They were considered social deviants. There was no
but they were still considered. They were so normal that every city in the U.S. had them, but even some smaller cities, I mean, some and stuff as well. They would film. Oh, hey, Robert. It's like they would film. They would show really big. They would show Jaws during the day and at night. To make it some extra.
Jaws, yes.
A little edgier.
I was talking specifically about pornography.
Okay, yeah, well, a lot of those places that would exclusively show pornography, it was something people still went either way because it was the only place to see that kind of media.
Right. I mean, that's true because that was more like in the 70s. VHSs hadn't become that big yet, but let's be very clear. The people that, if I think about Pee Wee Herman's career, if you were caught or like found out to be one of these people, like going to one of these theaters.
Yeah, but that was like in 96 or like something.
It's not like things got like less. It's not like things got like less progressive from the 70s. It was just, I think,
much more private.
If you were considered to be a upstanding member of society, you were not supposed to like pornography, and that's something that has like changed. We don't have like the moral judgment of you can't be a good person or you can't be a teacher or whatever just because you watch pornography. Like pornography is something we now assume everyone does, like in every way, shape, or form. The idea that James Wood is somehow a sleazy guy because his station markets in porn, like that's kind of an insane.
I mean, even today we have that association. I mean, look at any kind of creators or content creators that come from that industry. Look at Sasha Grey, for example, the former porn star turned actress that was in Entourage, and that was in a Steven Soderbergh movie, The Girlfriend Experience. There is that association that she can't act. She was a porn star, or porn star. I'm not sure, but there's that association that if you were or are part of that world, it's impossible to get out, which it's incredibly difficult too.
It's definitely that's something that it was I guess my issue is that like it was way harder back then. That was almost it's not like we have become more conservative. If anything, we're now getting to the point where like someone like Sasha Grey can't star in a Steven Soderbergh film. This came up recently. It's like, well, maybe she's not great in it or whatever, but like it can happen. Like, we don't have the same value judgments. What's his name? But
also something to consider is that on that level is that it's almost, I don't want to say edgy, but at the same time, it's definitely much more accepted. I mean, like you can pull out any Cosmopolitan magazine or Vanity Fair where it's like where the title of the article is like, what's your kink kind of thing, where everyone, it's almost like a social, I don't want to say a social aspect, but it's almost people are craving this sense of identity. And, and regardless of what it is, people love that sense of identity. And because if you're able to find your identity, you're able to kind of find others with a similar identity.
Yes, exactly. And then it makes you less, it doesn't make you a freak. And especially too, the idea of women liking porn and the idea of porn for women and the idea of like, taking the reins in pornography in any way. The idea of women, like the idea of Deborah Harry's character was not supposed to be like, that's just like a cool chick. She was supposed to be so great. Like she's supposed to be such a like a hypocritical concept because she's supposed to be with a therapist and yet had all these kinks, as if those two things were impossible to reconcile. Whereas today, because porn has changed us. It has changed the way that we have sex. It has changed the way that, like, you know, Videodrome, it is a real thing. We change ourselves based on the stuff that we watch, and as much as it like changes based on what they think the cultural tastes are at the time. Like,
things are definitely, obviously, especially in this world, it's changing, but it's at a point where the public is constantly changing. She's like, for example, her admitting that during the interview at the beginning of the movie, she's like, I am already a person that's overstimulated in my role, you know, here on TV as a celebrity radio therapist kind of figure, you know, and I am admitting this, you know, she's already on this kind of gray area at the time where, gray area at the time where she's like, I am someone that's, I do see something that this is extreme and dangerous and violent or sexual or whatever it might be. But at the same time,
she's saying I'm sexualized, and that's crazy.
Exactly. And, you know, but thing is, I don't think anyone else was like, there was no gasp or anything from her being stimulated. It was more about him being stimulated, not so much about people viewing it being like, if you're viewing it, you're not like a deviant or anything watching it. It's just more like if you're creating the content, if you're
the person's peddling it, right? Exactly.
If you're actively involved in the creation or publication aspect, that's the aspect that's deviant, not absorbing.
Well, no, I mean, look, and that's a larger conversation, but I do feel like the idea of it's not, and it's also just not just sex, it's also the violence too. It's the idea of like, are you a bad person because you are turned on, because you seek these things out, because is there something wrong with you? Are you being, or by seeking these things out, have you then become changed in some irreparable way that you can never come back from? You'll never be able, you know, that idea that like if you masturbate too much, you'll never be able to have sex like and have an orgasm, which used to be like an old wives' tale. Because, like, you know, you can only have so many orgasms in your life, and if you get used to masturbation, then like you'll never be able to do it normal. Like these were some of these like weird hangups we had. Now, like, we're in an era where, if anything, porn is everywhere, amateur porn, all this different.
Yeah, we're almost a little more numbed to it, I guess.
Sorry?
Or a little, I guess we're just a little more numbed to it. Like
we're numb, yeah.
Yeah, we're just a little, we expect it. We know, we're just a little more aware of a lot of these things. But also we're also part of the generation where we grew up with it. It's something that's been actively involved with our lives since we were kids. We grew up with the TV. We grew up having access to, I remember getting my first cell phone and I was like in middle school and getting our family computer for the first time, things like that. So we're definitely part of this generation where we've actively been consuming this form of media our entire lives, which is a very kind of recent thing.
And going back to your point, how we consume it. We don't consume it in a theater necessarily. We consume it over these like I guess you consider them both hot and cold media, hot fudge Sunday media, where we watch it on our phone. We click like, we make decisions on a choose your own adventure kind of level of what do we want to see next. It's almost like Videodrome is almost like a Black Mirror episode that came true. Like it's just, this is what actually happened. No, we don't get brain tumors, but yes, we have changed, and our sensibilities have changed because of the way the media is being, not just that it's porn or not that it's violent, but because media has changed, because we got the internet, because we have streaming services, because we have the ability to watch incredibly violent movies like on our phones while on the subway. You know, we can be numb to it, we can interact with it, we can have all these, like, that's why I think Videodrome is actually an incredibly important film, looking back on it, because it actually predicted everything that we do today in terms of how we like absorb content, and then how we then react to content, and then how we create content ourselves, how we then like cannibalistically, you know, you are what you eat. Well, you also like, you are what you consume, and the consumerism aspect of it is there. So like, what you consume through your eyeballs, you end up becoming as a product. I mean, look what we're doing.
I think it also is something to remember, though, is because of that, it is like one of those movies that have all these really big things that you just touched on and why it's important for people to watch. At the end of the day, how would you recommend this to anyone else? Would you recommend it? Would you recommend it to a certain type of this movie? Would you want to see this movie again actively, or
well, that's a question
like once a year kind of thing?
I mean, like Alex, that's a great question that you just asked yourself. I think everyone knows my answer here, but after having seen the movie, like what are your thoughts? Like you can like something theoretically or have a lot of thoughts on it and still never want to watch it in your eyeballs again.
Yeah.
I mean, so what were your takeaways from it?
Well, as someone that loves movies, I feel like anyone that actively enjoys movies, I think should, just because, you know, it's a really weird, interesting story that we haven't really seen before. But also like the visuals, things like that, it's really fantastic. And it's part of like one of the most iconic, you know, directors of our time. So we can't really ignore that, obviously, definitely at that point. Or if you're just really into movies like Interstellar, Memento, where it's a very philosophical, where there is that open, where you are going to have that conversation. If you're watching with someone else, you're going to want to actively talk about it afterward. However, I would not recommend it to someone like my mom.
Yeah.
That doesn't like watching movies like that. She only likes watching movies like Armageddon and Independence Day and Fast and the Furious. She likes watching
movies, just not a lot of violent gruesome movies.
Well, she doesn't like watching movies that are really philosophical and really have these really where they have these big themes. She likes to go to movies for escapism.
That's why you wouldn't recommend Videodrome to your mom, is because it's got too many philosophical themes, and not because of the big.
She would hate it, like actively hate it.
I think another word maybe the reason for it is like it's cerebral, it's up for interpretation, and in that way it can be sort of frustrating in a lot of ways that like a lot of TV shows can end like that now. You know, like what's actually going on, what happened, like, you know, Christopher Nolan, Inception. David CLL coming with a donation. Given how much the world has changed, would it be possible to remake the movie now? If so, how do you see it being done? Great question. They tried it. It was called Existence. David Cronenberg tried to remake, essentially when he saw the big trend in video games, he tried to remake the same, like, or take the same things in Videodrome and make them into an alternate reality game aspect. But the game is also it's, you know, you put on a headset or whatever, but it also attaches to your spine, and it's like a living organism, and it brings you into an alternate world. It's Existence with a Z on it. It stars Jude Law and God, I want to say Ashley Judd, but that might be wrong. I didn't love that movie. I think it's very like a pale imitation of some of these ideas that he took in Videodrome, and they weren't quite there yet. Go ahead.
Sorry. Oh, it just kind of reminds me a little bit of like, it's a mix. Sounds like a mixture between like, whatchamacallit, Ready Player One and The Matrix.
Yeah, sort of. So imagine, like, you know, the part where he puts the thing on his head and you're gonna go hallucinate now. So that's like that's the first layer that we're getting to the story, is that they're these people and they're running around to get this tech that's going to let them like live this alternate reality or augmented reality, I guess. So again, it kind of did predict a couple things in terms of how we play video games now with VR and augmented reality, Pokemon Go. But it did come off as sort of like half-baked and a pale imitation, probably because Marshall McLuhan didn't spend that much time thinking about video games or our interaction with them, which is a whole other story. But yeah, do you have any like final thoughts on the film? I mean, everyone now knows, as Robert said, it seems like I maybe wrote the movie. No, I just care a lot about it. I forget, and which, by the way, thank you for this show existing, for us coming up with this, because I'd kind of forgotten that I liked Videodrome. I thought that like my name just fit very cleverly with it. And like years ago, I just decided to make it like Videodrew, long live the Drew Flesh. As they say, long live the new flesh. I don't think I've seen this movie more than twice before this time, and I hadn't seen it in over a decade, and I'd forgotten like how much this movie speaks to me. So I think we all know where I stand on this, but what about you? what are your final thoughts on the film?
Yeah, I think it's just like one of those movies I feel like I need to come back and watch every few years. I mean, like it seems like one of those movies that like every time you watch it, you kind of get something a little bit new from it, just a little bit. So how you felt when you watched it for the first time. Like I just did. Like who knows? My views might completely change in like 10 years. Who knows?
Were you at any point during the beginnings of like when the opening shot being like, oh shit, this is porn? Because I had forgotten that like it's just straight porn for a bit, and I was like looking around, I was like, oh man, it's weird. I'm just kind of watching porn in this movie.
I never thought of it as like porn or any kind of pornographic or anything like that. Well, the part with that, I'm not gonna lie, the most uncomfortable part for me is like when he was like starting to like awkwardly massage the TV, and I didn't get uncomfortable at any other part of the movie except that, and he was just like, yeah. And then like Nikki's like lips were on the screen, and she was like, come to me.
Yeah, the bulging lips.
And I was just like, nope, wait, huh? He's doing,
I think weirdly it got to me early. Well, Cronenberg also, like, he does a great thing in his early works. I mean, up until I think History of Violence, where he has a real interest in the melding of the mechanical and the organic, and like the tech and this sort of creepy, uncanny valley. I actually have a Cronenberg tattoo that's based on that concept exactly.
Really?
Yeah, I'm gonna try not to knock anything over and show the world, but let's see if I can get this up. Let's see. So I have on the back of my leg, it is a mermaid with a television set for a head.
Love that.
Yeah.
That's
so that
gorgeous.
was inspired by the Cronenberg idea of the melding of both like the sort of, magical, mystical worlds and the technocratic worlds, and also the very visceral, human elements, like literally fusing those things together. What made me uncomfortable actually was watching the beginning, where it's just some chick tied up, electrocuted, and being tortured with guys with hoods, like against background. And they're like, this is weird. We should probably show this to the rest of the world. And I was like, no, that's going to start a whole trend.
Well, I was kind of curious about when I did see that. I wondered if it was going to. I wondered if that was going to be. It was going to be shown that it was going to be more sexual, or if if it's like the whole thing was like they're actually killing them, and this is actually a murder thriller. Like after that one, that's what I wasn't sure what to expect after that, because I initially, when I saw that, my first thought was like potential snuff film.
Yeah, well, and I think they revealed that it was, because she definitely did die, and they murdered her, I guess. I still think the funniest part of this movie was Deborah Harry, a very Drew Grant character, just going, "How do I get to be a contestant on this?" Like, she goes like, "How do you think they get people to come back every week?" And he's like, I don't think there's anyone coming back. He's like, "Why do you think this is a show, like a game show?" I just really love that element where she's like, I wonder what you win. I mean,
well, even that, I mean, like, she thought it was a game show. He thought it was like an actual show with actors, because he said, it's cheaper and easier, and all that good stuff. The studio would be easy to put together.
He basically thinks it's the beginning of reality TV or amateur porn, which is that it's cheap to make, it's easy to do. I also like. There's two more lines I love here. Where he's trying to figure out who made the thing, and he's like, hey, what could it be? And they're like, oh, they're dangerous people. And he goes, what, the mafia? Like, they do business. Like, the mafia is just really into the porn industry. And then he goes, or the woman he's talking to goes, no, it's more political than that, which is like a very interesting read on the film. I feel like that's Cronenberg taking him, being like, hey guys, I know there's torture and porn and violence, but like, remember that this is a political and philosophical, and like I'm saying something here. Just like, yeah, there's all this crazy shit going on, but also like think about it for a second. Think about what I'm putting in your eyeballs, but don't be distracted. But also, I'm having like a hard time keeping your attention without the vagina stomach.
But at the same time, we're gonna remember I don't like that weird stuff.
Yeah, I don't like that. I don't like that weird stuff. He's like,
I don't like that weird stuff.
guys. So yeah, I think we've had some cinema biases revealed both on my side. I think we've revealed that I'm really biased towards Videodrome. That's been revealed, and
What we're gonna argue is are we biased for or against it?
I mean, I'm very happy that you took a chance and watched it, because I know that you were really hesitant, like you really didn't want to see it, and I think maybe that you overcame a bias, perhaps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, indeed I did. I overcame a bias of body horror and Cronenberg and philosophical movies.
Or that maybe thinking, I'm not sure if you went in thinking that this would be a very like cerebral film, like that.
I went in thinking it was going to be some kind of philosophical cerebral movie based off the visuals alone.
Really?
I mean, like, based off like the movie poster, where I mean, he's literally he's bouncing. I mean, it looks like he's trying to claw away from a TV with a big face on it. So.
See, I would read that, I think I would, if I was trying to take the other side, I'd be like, that just means like this is going to be like a Michael Bay of torture porn. This is going to be an Eli Roth movie. But no, like you had a sense that this was going to have some bigger, grander statement.
Also, I mean, it's Cronenberg, so,
Yeah. Okay. Well, I like that. Okay, guys, join us, I believe, next week, I think, hopefully, for Josie and the Pussycats. This has been the inaugural premiere episode of Pointing Upwards in the Wrong Direction Cinema Bias with Videodrew and Alex Mack. And please, you can find Alex Mack. Where can they find you, Alex Mack?
Yeah, you can actually see me hosting Schmoebaits every single week on Wednesday. Actually, tomorrow I'm going to be hosting a little Schmoebaits where we try to argue and debate to the death. You really kind of arguing Schmoedown's biggest questions, such as, best belt match of all time, down to what is the best, face or heel of all time, all that good stuff. So it was a lot of fun times.
The heel move, which is now a running joke in our house, which is that a heel move?
Oh yeah. There's a lot of debates. Drew over here, she's actually been on a few episodes as a guest and a judge, and so go back and rewatch them because they are wonderful.
Still can't believe that turned out. By the way, I want to point out, Garth said his friend Kate Hanley did the movie for Josie and the Pussycats.
Yeah, she did the music.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I did the music for the movie Josie and the Pussycats, which is which is pretty cool. And hey, Garth, guys, you can catch me. This is my YouTube channel. You can head over to my Patreon where I'm starting up a bunch of new stuff. I also have VideoChronic, which is me and NerdChronic's quiz show that we have basically most nights, 8 p.m. You're still looking this up?
I'm not, no, because I love the movie and I love the soundtrack, and I personally didn't recognize the name. I was just curious. And I wonder. Oh, there it is. She was one of the writers of 2 of the songs, Shapeshifter and Come On.
Hey, let's save it for next week.
Sorry.
I don't want to get spoiled. But the other place you guys can find me always is videodrew.club. That's my Streamlabs. I realize now in retrospect I should have just kept the Streamlabs name because this seems to be really confusing people. But it's an upgraded Streamlabs, videodrew.club. You can do a lot of fun stuff on there. We got a lot of great patrons and support this year, this month especially. I know you guys are all struggling, so any donations and support, whether that is monetary or just tech help, which is something I always need, and people creating art for us. Thank you, Robert Adams, for creating this amazing. I'm gonna put this over here for a second. Oh no, that's not gonna work. Let's see. How do I get the thing where you can see just the screen? Nope, not gonna let me do it. Hold on. Nope. Well, anyway, there's a great image that's here that if I take myself off screen, you might be able to see for a second.
I don't know.
Never mind. Tech help, much wanted. Mucho gracias. Guys, so check back next week and we will have more news about this new exciting show, Cinema Bias. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And Alex, any last goodbyes?
Please like, comment, and subscribe. For sure. Comment on this video. I mean, if there's any movies that you really would love for us to cover, definitely let us know, because this is all about Drew and I kind of having these discussions about what movies I love that she doesn't know about, and vice versa. But at the same time, there's like a lot of movies that we out there that we forget about. So please let us know any weird ones that you would love for us to check out.
And if there's a movie that you think neither of us have probably seen or liked, I mean, this is all about uncovering our unconscious preconceived biases about films that we might actually be missing out on because they might actually really speak to us. So if there's anything like that, so please, give your description or give your comments, like and subscribe, and we will see you all in the internet, in the Videodrome. Long live the Drew Flesh. Good job, everybody. Okay, bye. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. 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 Bye-bye.